Welcome to the Grizzled Warmaster. My name is Doug, and today we're going to take a look at the items we learned about the 3rd edition rules set from the previews on the community page this week. So throughout the week here at the beginning of June, we got some samples of some of what we can expect to see in the new rules set. Really, there was 2 days of rules and 2 days of just kind of lore and fluff and kind of backstory of the studio, so not really all that interesting. So let's take a look at some of the things they did, and unfortunately I couldn't order these in the correct order. First thing I wanted to touch on, because it's relatively quick and easy, shooting phase. Unfortunately, there is not going to be any real changes to the shooting phase. It is generally pretty much exactly the same. You know, if you're engaged with an enemy, you can only shoot that target. If you're a hero within 3 inches, you are -1 to hit. And again, if you have 10 or more wounds characteristics of 10 or less as the hero. Otherwise, no real changes to the shooting phase, which is kind of disappointing. The next thing we got was the heroic actions, heroes and heroic actions, and this I think is the most crazy good thing that we've seen so far. Now this is an entirely new rule set for the new edition, and I think it does a good job of making heroes more heroic and quite a bit more valuable to your force. So essentially, a unit that has the hero keyword on its war scroll is a hero. At the start of the hero phase, you can carry out 1 heroic action from the table below with 1 friendly hero. The effect of the heroic action is treated the same way as the effect of ability for rules purposes. Now notice, and they point this out in the article, it says at the start of the hero phase, you can carry out 1 heroic action from the table below with 1 friendly hero. Not your hero phase. So everybody is going to get to make a heroic action each hero phase. So you will get 2 heroic actions per round. So even if you are player 2, you will still have the option to maybe heal your hero, maybe use their finest hour. So let's go through the heroic actions you can take. Basically, I believe they do tell you in the write-up again that well, you only take 1 heroic action, so it doesn't matter. It actually calls out the finest hour, which we'll get to, so never mind. Let's go back here. Heroic leadership. Basically, you pick a hero, roll a die. On a 4-up, you get a command point that can only be spent during that turn. So it's that turn. So if you're player 1 and it's your turn, you use heroic leadership. You get an extra command point on a 4+. By the end of your turn, you have to have spent that command point or you lose it. So it's a little bit limited, but that doesn't really matter, I don't think. Now, I like that I find it interesting. I shouldn't say I like. I don't know yet. You add 2 to the roll if your general has been slain, meaning you'll get a command point on a 2+, because they do specify that your beginning of the round or beginning of your turn command point is if your general is on the table. So if your general dies, it looks like they haven't spelled that out. We haven't seen that yet, but it sounds like you do not get a command point if your general is dead at the start of your turn, at the start of your hero phase. So that could be a big deal here. You may find yourself, if your general dies early on, needing to use this heroic action to keep up on your command points. Alright, next, heroic willpower is basically you pick a friendly hero that is not a wizard and they can unbind a spell or dispel an endless spell in yours. I believe, if it's the enemy hero phase, you can unbind a spell. If it's your hero phase, you can dispel an endless spell. As if you were a wizard. With the same caveat, you can still only attempt to unbind or dispel the same spell or endless spell once in the phase. So that's normal. Their finest hour is I think a really cool ability. It's pick one friendly hero, add 1 to wound rolls for attacks made by that hero until the end of the turn, and add 1 to save rolls for attacks that target the hero until the end of the turn. You cannot carry out this heroic action with the same hero more than once per battle. It's interesting and probably very important that caveat was there. But this could be a good, if you're the second player in turn 1 and somebody's going to alpha strike your main hero, boom, you give them a +1 to their save, gives them a better chance of surviving that alpha strike. So your 4+ armor save, hero god character, or maybe 3-up save god character, is targeted by Caradron Overlords in turn 1. It gives you that just a little bit more of a save ability, gets your save down to 2 or 3+, so that you might be able to weather that storm of incoming fire, so that you keep that important piece. So that's really cool. I like that. I'm excited to see, you get somebody like the Caradron coming after Teclis in turn 1. He can spend a Ether Quartz to give him +1 to the saves, and then he can use their Finest Hour to give him +1 to saves. And again, maybe you don't get alpha struck and you get a combat hero in there, and give him that +1 to wound as well. That would be awesome. And then finally, what will probably get used the most is, especially we'll see here with monstrous heroes, is heroic recovery. You pick a friendly hero and make a heroic recovery roll of 2d6. You roll 2d6. If the roll is less than the hero's bravery characteristic, you can heal a d3 wounds allocated to the hero. If the roll is equal to the hero's bravery characteristic, you can heal 1 wound allocated to that hero. While many heroes will have that 8, 9, 10 leadership, that makes it very likely that you're going to get to do the d3 wounds recovered. And remember, you can do this every hero phase. So that means in a round, you might be recovering 2d3 health. Basically every player's turn recovering a d3 wounds. That could be very significant. Again, we'll see with monstrous heroes, and we're going to look at them in just a bit here. All right, sticking with heroes, let's look at some of the information we get about command points. And these are from 2 different sections. I took this out of the community article. This is very interesting. Starting command points. After determining who will take which turn, so I'm assuming this is every round after you've rolled to see who gets priority in the round. The player who will take the first turn receives 1 command point, and the player who will take the second turn will receive 2 command points. And this is after you determine who is taking priority, but before either hero phase starts. So you're getting these command points before anyone is acted, before anything. So that's great, especially in round 1. If you're player 2, you're going to start with at least 2 command points to be able to react to what your opponent is doing to you. To maybe use that, use some of their defensive bonuses, use some defensive command abilities, use insane courage if you need, that kind of stuff. So that's really important, I think. Then here's where they say you'll still earn another point if your general's on the battlefield. So we've kind of established that the general is your source of the command points you get each turn. But notice this next part, bringing your total to either 2 or 3 points for most of the battle before taking any other abilities into account. That tends to suggest, that doesn't confirm, but tends to suggest that you get the command points your general provides you at the same time at the beginning. Maybe not. Maybe that means you're going to get 2 or 3 for the round after taking into account what you get in your hero phase. Maybe that makes more sense. But we'll have to wait and see how that goes. But anyways, this is what they meant by the fact that you're going to be getting quite a bit more command points to use and quite a bit more abilities. We haven't seen those yet. They haven't really called attention to any new command abilities you're getting. But they have said there are going to be reactive actions you can do. So I'm curious to see where we go in that one. Now let's look at using command abilities. One friendly model is going to issue the command when you spend a command point, and you pick a friendly unit to receive the command. And here's who can issue commands. Unit champions can issue commands just like the OC Bone Reapers. Now, this whole system really puts Bone Reapers behind the curve when they're dealing with their own points, which, yes, they generate them every turn or every round, but they're really generating on average, if you don't have Catacross in your army, you're generating on average just a little bit more than the average player does in the new system that's coming. But most of your abilities are tied to spending those points to activate abilities that other people's armies have built into their war scrolls and require nothing to be spent on them. So it's going to be interesting to see how they address that issue for Bone Reapers, if they do, because if not, I have a feeling Bone Reapers are going to fall down the list of competitive armies. But all right, so we get heroes can issue commands to any units that are wholly within 12 inches, and then generals and totems can issue commands to units wholly within 18. So that's going to make those standard bearers for your army, and not a lot of armies have them yet, but we're seeing more of them. Stormcaster getting one. The new Cruel Boys are getting one. The Lumineth have one. So I have a feeling that most armies are going to start getting new totems. The Seraphon already have one. So yeah, those are going to become more commonplace, I have a feeling. All right, and finally, let's look at Monstrous Rampage. They told us that heroes and monsters were going to get upgrades to make them more of a threat, more impactful on the board. And here is how monsters, at least one of the ways, monsters are going to impact the battlefield. And that's with Monstrous Rage. This happens at the end of the charge phase, and each player can carry out one Monstrous Rampage from the table below with each friendly monster. And it happens at the end of the charge phase, not your charge phase. So both players, any monsters who are engaged at the end of the charge phase, can use one of these monstrous abilities. So first you have Roar, probably the best ability here in my opinion. You pick an enemy unit within 3 inches of this model and roll a die. On a 3+, that unit cannot issue or receive commands in the following combat phase. This means now a monster can relatively confidently wade into 60 grots and feel confident that he can roar at them so that they can't get insane courage thrown on him. They can just wail on those little guys and then watch them run at the end. Watch a bunch more run. So that's a really nice ability in my opinion. Stomp is giving basically every monster the ability, if you choose, to do mortal wounds on the charge. As long as the target, as long as the enemy unit within 3 inches of this model is not a monster, you can roll a die. On a 2-up, you do D3 mortal wounds. Great against more elite armies. That you run into a bunch of Sequitors or a bunch of Mortek Guard. You're like, okay, I'm not going to worry about roaring at these guys. I'm just going to cause them mortal wounds and get a couple of guy or two out of the mix. So that'd be great. Titanic Duel, cool, but probably won't come up terribly often. But is pick an enemy monster within 3 inches of this model. Add 1 to hit rolls for attacks made by this model that target the enemy monster until the end of the combat phase. Now this could be cool again, especially against or with monsters who are particularly good against monsters. Like one of the Mega Gargants, I believe, is extra effective when fighting monsters. So yeah, great. You get him in there into the monster, enemy monster. You give him that +1 to hit, and he's even more likely to get all of his cool abilities against that monster. That's cool. And then finally, smash to Rubble. Pick one faction terrain feature or defensible terrain feature within 3 inches of this model and roll a die. On a 3+, the terrain feature is demolished. If it was defensible and the scenery rules on its war scroll cannot be used for the rest of the battle if it was a faction terrain feature. That is really cool. Now, they don't here on the terrain features demolished if it was defensible. It doesn't have the same wording as Catacross does, where he requires the guys who are garrisoning it to roll, and on a 1 they're slain. So that's interesting. I'm wondering if there is a next rule, like a 12.1.2, which maybe, or 12.1.1 maybe, that explains these in more detail and kind of calls out those specific weird scenarios. But this is a nice little feature. You're unlikely to use this very often, but if you get yourself into the position where you can, smash a shrine, or the Lumineth's little floating shrine, or the Bone Reaper's Bone Tithe Nexus, or any of those. So it can be cool if you, smash a shrine for Corn, or for the Flesh Eater Courts, or I think it's a throne for the Flesh Eater Courts, but whatever. All of these factions that have their terrain features, it could be really cool. But that's it so far. That's what we've got in these first few days. I'm really excited. I gotta say, Sons of Behemat are going to be beasts with these new rules, because the Mega Gargants are heroes and monsters, so they will be able to take heroic actions and do monstrous rampages. So you're going to have Sons of Behemat, who are already tough to knock down, with their 34 wounds or so, who could heal themselves if they want now. Which also, I still don't think he's worth 760 points, I think it is, but that makes Catacross Catacross is the Kragnos. Names are too close. They gotta work on their naming conventions. That makes Kragnos just a little bit more of a threat. Just kind of like, oh, you're almost good enough to spend. I mean, if he were 660, I could see taking him. 760 is still too much. I mean, he does a crap ton of damage. He can really wreck face. But I don't know that one time increasing his armor save to 1+, or his ability to heal a D3 damage a couple times. I don't know. It's kind of tough. I mean, he can resist most spells that are going to throw out mortal wounds. So those few armies that can really pump out mortal wounds in the combat phase and the shooting phase, can they do the 18 wounds they need to do with him not healing it little by, because shooting, it's going to come in little by little. He'll be able to heal a little of it. If he gets he can get into combat with a bunch of grots and then make sure they can't get, I'm the boss, so stab him good. So there's, skinks really don't deal that many mortal wounds with the 6 on the wound roll. Not enough to threaten somebody with 18 wounds. So yeah, I don't know. I still think 760 is a little too high for him, but these rules make him seem a little more doable. With the ability to heal a bit, to cancel out command abilities, that's pretty good. I think any hero monster has just gotten significantly better, and I'm in it for it. I'm excited about it. Maybe Stormcast's Drakes will actually be worth something. The Star Drakes will actually be worth something now. Generally, they are not worth their points. Oh man, what is the Iron Jaws named hero? Gotrek. Not. I always remember. Gortrek. Man, he's gonna be nasty now. So many of the monsters and the heroes who are also monsters are gonna be so good. I'm excited to see them on the table. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below, and I'll talk to you next time. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and if you would, please share with a friend. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.